Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a story that is, well, it's honestly terrifying, but also incredibly inspiring. We're going to break down exactly how a completely innocent man lost a whole decade of his life to the justice system. And, more importantly, how the truth literally fought its way out of the dark.
So, let me ask you a pretty heavy question. What would you actually do if the entire world suddenly believed you were a killer? Like, imagine being trapped in this absolute nightmare scenario. You know you're 100% innocent, right? But suddenly, public opinion, the media, and this supposedly flawless physical evidence just entirely turn against you. Everyone you know, and millions you don't, are totally convinced of your guilt. It sounds like some crazy Hollywood thriller, but for one guy, this was his terrifying, everyday reality.
Section 1. The Mansion Murder.
Picture this. It's a freezing winter night, and the city wakes up to some absolutely devastating news. Victor Hayes, this super-wealthy, highly successful businessman, was found murdered inside his own luxury mansion. I mean, the shockwaves to the community were massive. The media jumped all over it immediately, dubbing the unknown suspect the Mansion Killer. You can imagine the panic, right? The public is demanding answers right away, and the police are under this immense, crushing pressure to just find a culprit and find him fast.
Section 2. The Perfect Suspect. For the investigators, the pieces just seem to fall right into place. They swiftly zero in on and arrest Daniel Carter. Now, Daniel was a former employee, and he'd actually been fired by Victor just a few months prior. So boom, there's your supposed motive. Then look at the absolute mountain of circumstantial evidence they stacked against him. We're talking his fingerprints on a broken glass right near the body, Daniel's own jacket found just tossed in the mansion's garden, plus multiple eyewitnesses claiming they saw him near the mansion that very night. To the cops and the general public, this wasn't just a strong case, it was a slam dunk. They were absolutely certain they'd caught their guy.
And this right here perfectly illustrates how terrifyingly fast the wheels of a predetermined narrative can spin. Day 1, the murder is discovered. Day 2, Daniel is already in handcuffs. Within just a single week, a total media frenzy has essentially painted him as a monster. And in just 6 months, Daniel is handed a life sentence. And here's the kicker. Throughout this blindingly fast process, during every single brutal interrogation, Daniel kept saying the exact same thing. I didn't kill him. He desperately insisted on his innocence. But honestly, with that overwhelming public narrative, nobody was listening.
Section 3. Forgotten behind bars.
10. That's the number of years Daniel spent sitting in a dark, lonely prison cell. A full decade of an innocent man's life just erased. Think about everything you've done in the last 10 years. Meanwhile, the world outside completely moved on. The newspapers obviously stopped printing his name, the public entirely forgot about the so-called Mansion Killer, and Daniel was just left to rot for a crime he had absolutely nothing to do with.
Section 4. The Journalist's Discovery. Fast forward years later, and we meet Emma Reed. She's this incredibly sharp, young investigative journalist who just refused to let this dusty old case stay closed. Remember how the police claimed the fingerprints on the broken glass proved Daniel was in the room during the murder? Well, Emma noticed this really strange, glaring detail in the forensic reports. The fingerprints were only found on the outside surface of the glass. Now think about it. If he'd broken it during a violent struggle, his prints would likely be all over it, right? This completely suggested Daniel had just touched that glass way earlier, probably during a past company event when he still worked there. That one detail completely flips the context of the physical evidence.
But she didn't stop there. As Emma dug deeper, the so-called mistakes in the initial investigation started looking a whole lot more like deliberate sabotage. She uncovered something wild. The security camera footage from the mansion had actually been edited before it was ever submitted to the court. I mean, no way, right? This wasn't just poor police work anymore. Somebody had actively tampered with the narrative. Somebody was hiding the real truth.
Section 5. The Real Killer Revealed.
And this all builds into literally one of the most calculated frame-ups you will ever see. Let's break it down. Step 1. The actual motive. Victor's own business partner, Richard Blake, murdered him to completely seize control of their super lucrative company. Step 2. Finding the perfect fall guy. Richard knew all about Daniel's recent, very public firing, so he maliciously planted Daniel's jacket right at the crime scene. Step 3. The cover-up. Richard used his insider access to manipulate that mansion's security evidence, making sure Daniel looked guilty while totally erasing his own tracks. It was just a terrifyingly perfect execution of deceit. So armed with this explosive truth,
Emma goes straight to the press. She publishes her findings for the whole world to see. And let me tell you, the dominoes fell fast. The massive public outcry basically forced the justice system to finally act. The case gets officially reopened, they ordered brand new, modern forensic tests, and guess what? They absolutely confirmed every single one of Emma's discoveries. The false narrative the world had swallowed for 10 whole years just collapsed overnight.
Section 6. Freedom and Forgiveness. After a decade of stolen life, those heavy prison gates finally opened, and Daniel walked out into the sunlight as a free man. Obviously, he was immediately swarmed by reporters, and one of them asked him the question I think we'd all be wondering. Do you hate the people who accused you? Daniel just paused, looked up at the sky, gave this sad smile and said, no. Hate would only build another prison around me. Wow. Just think about the profound grace required to say something like that. After everything he was put through, he entirely refused to let bitterness consume the rest of his life. And those words just resonated across the entire country. The man who had been so viciously branded the Mansion Killer went through this complete public transformation. Because of his incredible perseverance and just this unbreakable spirit, Daniel became a national symbol of hope and a living, breathing reminder of why true justice matters so much. The world had so hastily judged him as a criminal, but the relentless pursuit of the truth eventually, finally, set him free. Which leaves us with this final thought to wrap up today's explainer. Will you look beyond appearances to find the truth before passing judgment? Daniel's story is a really stark warning about the danger of just blindly following public opinion or, accepting a narrative just because it looks convincing on the surface. The truth can sometimes be buried incredibly deep. But as Emma Reed and Daniel Carter showed us, if you fight for it long enough, it will eventually find its way into the light. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, and I'll catch you